Okay, so continuing here in inequalities in 1.6, which is what we're doing here. I'm on example 7 now. So let's take a look here at example 7. Crazy equation here, right? Crazy, 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 crazy. So we got to try to factor whatever we can. And on the bottom, it looks like I can split that because it's a difference of squares into x minus 1 and x plus 1. And on the top, it's 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1. So I cross out what's in common. So right there we go. And this is what I have left. Okay, so um, if we make 2x plus 1 equal to 0, the entire fraction would be 0, right? If we make any of those equal 0, then the whole thing is 0. So whatever makes that work is a solution. We know that for a fact. So I minus 1 on both sides, divided by 2. And this is like that one problem we did earlier. It's all about trial and error trying to figure this out. So I know if I plugged in a negative 1 over 2, it works. It makes it 0. Okay. So now I need to check the denominator to see what it can't be. It can't be a 1. It's right up here, right? 1 minus 0, that would make it 0. It can't be a negative 1, and it can't be 0. So we know it can't be 0. We know it can't be 1, and we know it can't be negative 1. We know what it can't be. So we know it can't be 0. We know it can't be that or that. We know it can't be 0, 1, or negative 1, which is what this work is that we're basically figuring out here. So we go to try to figure out what it can and cannot be. I already know what it can and cannot be, but basically we got to figure out everything else that it can be, and we're making a little checklist where to see where it's, if you plug in one of those numbers, what's the final answer? Well, when I plug in a number in here like a negative 2, I end up with a positive answer. When I plug in a number like negative 2, I end up with a negative answer and a negative answer. Down here, when I plug in a number in between that range, I get positive, I get positive, I get negative. Over here, when I plug in a number in that range, I end up with a positive, and a negative. When I plug in a number in this range, like a half, I end up with positive, I end up with positive, I end up with positive. And when I plug in a number like a 2, positive, positive, positive. So a positive times, and 2 negatives is a positive, so that's positive. This will be a negative final answer. This will be a negative final answer. This will be positive, and this will be positive. I am looking for where it is positive at, and those are all the areas, and that's just something you can double check. We include a half because that is a solution. Looking at this one to solve, I know that it can't be negative 3 because that won't work, but what we can do is minus 2 to make that equal to 0. Find common denominators, so this is an x plus 1 on the bottom, so I need to find a common denominator. So x plus 1, that's a minus 2x and a minus 6 on top. So when we combine like terms, right, we combine like terms, and the reason we switch the sign is because we're multiplying by a negative, so keep that in mind. That's why we flip the sign, that's what we end up with. Okay, not a big deal, except we know that it can't be, set each of these up to be 0, so we end up getting that x, when we divide by a negative, is less than or equal to negative 5, and this is x is greater than or equal to negative 3. So this is what we know. We know that a negative 5 is a solution. That's why I have a square bracket there, because it is a solution to the problem. So this is something to keep in mind. And we know that it can't be a negative 3, which is why we have curved brackets there, because we know it cannot be a negative 3. So when I go and fill this in with the factors that I have in that range, get a negative there and a negative there, a positive there, positive there, positive there, positive there. And this is for me plugging in numbers in that interval. If I plugged in a negative 6, I would get a negative here and a negative here. If I plugged in a negative 4, you get a 1, which is positive, and a negative 1, which is negative. If I plugged in like an 8, You get positive, and I get a positive. So this is just me plugging in numbers in the intervals of the top and the bottom. That's what this is, top, bottom. It's plugging in the intervals. So I get plus, minus, and plus, so I'm looking for wherever it's positive, which is on the outsides. And that's why I'm skipping over the middle in between them, and remember it includes 5 as an answer, because we know that if I plug in 5, it does equal 0.